Hi, I'm Renée Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Welcome back to the Spiritually Wired podcast. I have with me today Allura Halliwell, and she is a consciousness mentor, a transformational guide that is devoted to helping people reconnect with the truth of who they are. And Allura is also a mother of 3. She supports spiritual seekers who feel stuck despite years of personal growth using her signature modality, the consciousness method, where she teaches what she calls the interface, the powerful space between inner healing and outer creation, helping clients access clarity, sovereignty, and meaningful transformation. I am so looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Renee, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive in with you.
If you recognize her accent, where are you joining us from?
Right near Sydney, Australia. So on the other side of the
On the
planet
other,
to you.
exactly, right on the other side. Oh, I love it, Allura. I feel such a connection with you. And I know that one of the things that you share is that you had a radical awakening that happened in 2018 that really changed everything for you. So I would love to begin there with you sharing what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, that was the cataclysm and the catalyst for everything that has come from that space. It was a real timeline jump and a really massive reinvention of my whole being, to be honest. Prior to that time, I was a stay-home mom, 3 beautiful kids, in full wife mode, literally just thinking about where we were going on holidays, what we were going to eat for dinner, stressing about if my kids were okay, trying to manage my very dysregulated husband who was worried about money and finances and all the things, and just really trying to survive daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a meditation retreat with friends because I thought, what a great holiday. Let's go and have some space. I had a 4, 6, and 8-year-old at the time, been breastfeeding for 4 years straight and pretty much pregnant and breastfeeding for 8 years. And I was like, yeah, let's have a break. And little did I know that when I got to that retreat, my soul had other plans for me. So I ended up coming down to the beach for a meditation with the group, and I felt myself get really heavy and feel really like I couldn't sit up for the meditation. So I lay down and I could feel something was moving through me. I later realized it was my consciousness. And basically my consciousness came up out of the top of my head and I saw myself lying on the ground like you hear when people have near-death experiences and they leave their bodies. And my consciousness continued to rise up, and I went through the white light and I went into the void, and I was conscious enough to realize that my body was just lying, breathing, kind of just very slowly on the beach. Apparently, after I came back, people just thought I was sleeping, but I completely left this planet and merged back through the portal back to source, I feel. And I was out for about an hour and a half. But the sign that I knew something had happened was I was out and connected to source for so long that when I finally, something happened that brought me back slowly through the layers back to my body. But I remember opening my eyes and all I could see was energy. So instead of there being a sky, there was just white particles vibrating, and the sea was vibrating, the sand was vibrating, people were vibrating. I was only perceiving energy, and I realized I was actually energy in that moment. But more so than that, I had amnesia. I didn't know who I was. So I came off the beach, I looked in the mirror, and I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. And from that moment, I realized something radical had happened to me. I'd had a complete shift of my soul trajectory, my personality. And I suppose some people, that have had maybe similar experiences, it could be classified as some kind of like mental breakdown or something like that. But for me, it was very much anchored in a very deeply spiritual, eye-opening experience, because I got to leave my body and I got to return to my body.
Mm-hmm.
And the return was where everything began to open, and I really had to look at the interface of how we exist as humans, because it was really confronting to come back into a body and realize I had a nervous system that was like 40 years old and dense with all the survival and the emotional suppression, and feeling so expanded in my consciousness but so restricted in my physicality, and then opening my eyes to a world where things were really not aligned to my soul because they had suppressed so much of myself. It was a massive orientation. Yeah.
I would imagine it feels like it would have been crash landing back into your body and then having to readjust to what it felt like now. I'm what was that like? Because the way that you describe it, and just personally speaking, I had something happen that was different, but similar in the sense that it was very much losing sense of reality. And my experience was one of fear when I came back, because I couldn't understand. And the ego was grasping at trying to understand something that is not intellectually, you can't make sense of it on an intellectual level. So I'm curious what that was like for you. Did you experience fear? Was it easy to integrate back, or what did that look like?
It was a very complex process, to be honest. And it took me 2 years to fully bring my consciousness back into my body, because I had gone so far out and I'd had such a radical shift of my internal template that there was fear and there was a lot of confusion and there was a sense of grasping for someone to give me some guidance to support me to know how to orientate back into myself. And there was no one. It was the dark night of the soul for about 2 years, where I was like trying to find my way back. And I think you're right, that fear patterning just came through so strongly as well, because there was such a gap between who I knew that I now was and who I'd been, that there was so many places where I began to feel unstable. So my marriage crumbled. I felt like I couldn't parent properly for a couple of years. I wasn't able to watch television. I wasn't able to do things that normal people do, because I was so connected to this greater, vaster aspect of me, but at the same time trying to orientate into this physical body. And it gave me such a really powerful awareness of what it is like to be human, and why it can be really challenging for especially the sensitive souls,
Mhm.
because we are such vast, multidimensional divine beings, and having to navigate a nervous system, a brain, the patternings of the loops of our reality, the way we've designed things from what I call our core wounding or our limitations to survive ourselves and our physicality. There's a lot there to process. And so those 2 years were basically spent in deep meditation and deep awareness of where I could reorientate myself. And then eventually I got shown the gap between our inner world and the external world. And I call that the interface. And that's where I really found a lot of the access that helped me to come back into living a full life and being connected to my children, my community, my purpose. And that was really life-changing when I got that part. Yeah.
So the interface is the space where would you say both worlds meet? So the spiritual self, the light, the consciousness, and the physical body?
Yeah. And yeah, this dimensional experience we're having, being in time and space and in relation to ourselves and others. So yeah, that that external piece where we really need to look at how our internal imprint is projecting out of us and creating the external experience. And working there meant I had to do a lot of nervous system stretching. So my nervous system was very dialed into a certain survival mode. And through understanding that space, I was consistently stretching my nervous system beyond the perceived limitation. And it felt like a kind of a small death every time, because the limited version of me that was stuck in my body and my nervous system was like, hold on, we need to hold on. And the expanded version of me was like, no, we need to go. And finding the understanding of how to work in that expansion space was probably the most important part, to know how to not keep looping and stay stuck, because the nervous system is going to want to keep you safe and the brain is going to want to keep you safe, and the reality is going to want to give you an illusion of safety, that something outside of you is going to make you okay. And that part is so important to keep challenging, to keep pressing through. And it's vaster than manifestation, because it's so active in working in that space that it's more of an intentional peeling away that limitation and allowing new layers of consciousness and reality to emerge, which naturally manifests the things we most desire. Yeah.
Ah, you're speaking. Okay, I am receiving and hearing I just feel that, well, we know that life happens and we have certain experiences and they happen for a reason. And part of this awakening for you has led you to, or has given you the ability to see the world, consciousness in a different way, in a new perspective, which now helps you to be able to support other people. And in that process, I know you developed the consciousness method. Can you share, can you expand on what that is?
Yeah. So understanding that I had to work in this interface space and understanding that I had to merge the internal part with the external, I was like, well, what is the foundation of everything that's holding, like literally the glue holding everything together? And it's our consciousness, because the consciousness is basically the field of information that is within us, but also expanding all around us. So consciousness is personal, but it's also universal. And we have a relationship with universal consciousness just via our existence. We're here in a relationship, and consciousness wants that relationship, because when I merged back to source, when you're in source, your consciousness literally melts back into the source of the all. So you're not the individual version of you, but when you're everything, you can't know anything, because you're in that wholeness. So from having that experience, I was really shown that consciousness is so loving to us that it wants us to split from the source of itself, to know ourselves as individual beings.
Mhm.
So that consciousness can be the information and the holding and the support system that allows us to work with everything in our lives. And from that perspective, nothing that happens in our lives is actually something that has to limit us or keep us stuck in a loop. It's actually the material that allows our evolution. So, the evolutionary guidance we keep receiving from consciousness is via these things that are happening outside of us. The problem is the majority of us feel like a victim to our reality on some level, that there's some things that we just can't change, that we can't shift, that keep repeating, that don't feel like we can get any access or movement on. So I created the consciousness method to actually provide like a process. It's 12 processes to work with consciousness to shift those things that we think are unshiftable, that we think that we have to be a victim to for our whole lives. And via using that method and using the relationship to consciousness and the deep levels of processing that entails, we get a different projection of our reality, a different mirror shows up, and we have a different experience. And having used the method and having many take on that method, it's shown that there isn't actually anything that can't be shifted. There's nothing that I have seen. And I've worked with people with very, very severe trauma, with very, with a lot of like relational difficulties. And it's not saying that things resolve fully and that you're completely healed and released, but everything can be moved to such a way that you have a level of understanding and you have a level of connectivity to what has happened to you, that you no longer feel a victim to that thing and you can resolve it within your being, and that opens another level of reality. So it's not a promise of, oh, I'll be healed or things will be radically different. It's the resolution of your connection to consciousness, to the understanding of how it's being evolving you. And from that space, there's a liberation that happens. There's a freedom that comes because we don't have to be at the mercy of anything. We can always process it through our being and receive the information to allow a new level of consciousness to arise.
Beautiful. So would you say, because sometimes as people listen and there can be confusion with different terms that we're using, I know in the spiritual space. So would you say that consciousness, or when we speak of universal consciousness, some people could use the word God or spirit or the universe?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It's the
And then the
divine version of
consciousness,
you.
and then the your own consciousness being reflective of your soul, which is that individualized expression of this universal consciousness or source
Yeah.
or God. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, because it is we can get stuck sometimes on understanding, and the way in which you're sharing it is so powerful. And it is, as you said, it comes down to a level of understanding. So, an
Mm.
understanding that this universal consciousness is a loving energy. Is that part of what shifts things?
It's an evolving energy. It wants to evolve us back to a connection to ourselves, that we realize ourselves as source. We realize ourselves as the divine beings we are, really.
Mm.
So it's a tough love at times. I would say it's not a blanket like romantic or easy love. It's a love that wants to invite us to move beyond separation and fracture and disconnection back to the source of our truth. And it takes commitment. It's a relationship. And a lot of the beautiful people I work with come into that relationship with the divine, which is the divine aspect of themselves and the divine, the vaster divine, because it's all a mirror to each other. And that
Mhm.
kind of that boundary between God and self, or consciousness and the soul, kind of gets blurred because you become the whole of that experience in the process. Yeah.
And what would you say would be ways, because as you were mentioning earlier, such a big piece to it for you, it sounds like, and I mean we know as well, is the piece around healing with your nervous system and all of the ego part, which is what keeps us in that detached space. So what have you found to I mean, you had this incredible experience that happened to you. So clearly you were like not, it didn't happen in a small way. It was, okay, this is what's going to happen in this moment, which was very radical. Radical is a good way to share it. For most people, maybe they're not experiencing that level of radical awakening, which means that it's more of a gradual awakening. What does that look like for someone who wants, they're listening to you and they're saying, yes, I want more of this divine connection? How do you start to invite that in?
Ironically, it's via the pain. It's via
Mhm.
the sensitivity and via the pain. So most people that come to work with me are very conscious that they have pain in their lives. They have a sensitivity to ongoing loops and challenges that bring them a very vast relationship to their own pain. And I would say the pain and the fear are some of the greatest liberating forces we have, because they're the ones that actually open us to the true connection of ourselves. So I work a lot in the initial stages with people in guiding them on how to work directly with their pain, that they no longer feel a victim to it. And it becomes a portal for other levels of awareness and consciousness to be released. Because the thing with pain is when it gets lodged and densely lodged in the body, because we've had these fractures and traumas and experiences that have been unprocessed, our template is unconsciously just projecting that pain into our lives and creating the fear that we're going to experience that pain again. And the only thing every human fears on this whole planet is their own pain. So you think
Mhm.
about everything you don't want to have happen. The thing you don't really want is you don't want to have to go through the feelings if that thing happens. So if we go to the source of that, and if we understand what pain is in a sensory, somatic, emotional, multidimensional, and energetic framework, we don't have to have that separation and fear of our own pain. We can have the gateway that, wow, this pain is actually where I get to evolve through that space via the deepest connection with that pain. And from there, we begin to realize how we've been coding our reality almost in a form of addiction, where we're constantly trying to avoid that pain. So we have really set feelings, behaviors, and thoughts we keep doing around specific areas of our lives to keep us from touching what we fear, which is our own pain. So that will keep you trapped in a loop where you keep doing the same things and getting the same outcome, but there's fear preventing you from going beyond that limited loop. So when we know we can go to the pain, we don't have to fear staying stuck where we are.
Mhm.
And that is the first kind of process we do. And there's others, but that one, I would say, when people begin to understand that they can stop and turn and face their pain instead of running from it, their whole world changes. And the
Mhm.
things they thought they could never process from their childhood and from those places where it was just they were the victim and there was the perpetrator of life and others was there with them, and they couldn't find a way to process that, whether it was not being heard, not being seen, not being loved the way you wanted to be loved, not feeling enough, to like deeper levels of abuse. Those parts and processes that we can go through allows us to connect to that part that's sort of being trapped and stuffed down, and open that part for us to be free and to feel that we can be safe within ourselves. And that internal safety with your pain, I think, is the biggest thing we can do. Yeah. Yeah.
So it really is a reframing of the way in which we see pain. I love how you speak about it as being more of a portal to actually your liberation versus it being something that is taking you away from your liberation, which is, again, counterintuitive in the sense
Yeah.
of no one enjoys experiencing pain. No one wants that. And especially now in our society today, where we're so conditioned to numb ourselves, to distract I mean, it's very easy to numb yourself from pain today. So this is really an invitation to look at it differently. I'm curious what your thoughts are on, so would you say that from, I use the word soul, so maybe we can go back to your word, which is more of your individual consciousness, that do you believe, though, that the experiences that you are having here in this lifetime are based on the lessons, the healing that that is meant for you during this
Yeah.
lifetime, or is that even connected in the way in which you see things?
So, what I began to understand and experience is when I split from source to come back to my body, I realized that initial split is like the beginning of our separation pattern. Like we're in source and we split and we come the inception happens here. And then these patterns get initiated in our energetic fields where we need to survive our experience around us. And I found there are three core patterns that all of humanity is experiencing. And the three patterns that I've identified are being unloved, unworthy, or unknown, which means not seen, understood, heard, or not knowing, in that state of confusion or feeling lost or unsafe. So those three core wounds, I call them, are energetic separation points where every human is transversing these points of separation to have experiences that actually kind of like glue stick to those patterns. And then we go through and we process the feelings of not being loved, not being enough, not being seen, heard, or safe. And from there, our lives structure around those patterns. And that structure and that patterning is where we keep seeing outside of ourselves that we want to try to make the reality better. We want to get people to love us. We want to get people to accept us, to make us feel enough. We want to have the job that makes us feel enough, the house, the kids. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be, feeling safe wherever we are. We want to feel financially like great, healthy. All those things are about trying to get some security from physical reality to realize ourselves within, which is like, well, when I get that, I will be loved, or I'll be safe, or I'll be enough. And what I realized was it was just a siphon. So the more and more we try to externally get those things, the more and more they just kind of go off into the distance, and the more we feel that depletion. So it's module 3 in the consciousness method is we flip and reverse that design. So all that patterning about feeling unloved, unworthy, and unknown, we bring all that pattern back and we rewrite that pattern internally. And that's not about loving yourself or saying you're worthy or saying that you're safe. It's actually about a visceral, internal, energetic experience of the truth of yourself when you're no longer looking outside of yourself, because intrinsically we are loved, worthy, and known. And the only reason we know that's true is because we know the absence of it, right? Everyone knows where they don't feel enough and they don't feel loved and they don't feel safe and they don't feel heard. We can only know that if we know what the other side of that is. So our natural state is that. So it's about returning to the reset of the natural state of you. And the process to get there is coming through those wounds. Again, the deep work through the portal of the wounds to that reconnection.
This conversation is making my heart full because needs to be spoken. We don't hear it that much. And I mean, I think there is power to, as you said, loving ourselves and really inviting worth, and there's subconscious work that we can do. Yet when we actually go to the root of being a divine being and being in direct and remembering that. I always, for me, what was really powerful in my meditation practice was when I realized that it was a practice of remembering. It wasn't about anything else other than coming back to who I was. And I had never, all these words, again, sometimes they land when you are maybe ready to receive them, when you're open to it. But this remembering of the truth of who you are is so powerful. And it's not yet, we're getting there. The message is getting there. So I'm just so receiving this and so grateful that you are doing this work, because this is the light work that is needed.
Oh, thank you, Renee, for seeing and witnessing. Obviously, you have those codes and that resonance within you. That's who you are. And I think when it's an honor for me to be able to share with you, because this field of consciousness can be alive in this space. And for those listening, I agree, it might touch some level now, but I find it's really fascinating. If you are to re-listen to this in 6 months, something else will land. And I have that all the time for the people that do my meditations. They will have done the same meditation for a year, and then they'll message me and go, oh my gosh, I just heard something I've never heard in that meditation, because
Yeah.
the consciousness is engaging with the consciousness in a different way. And because it's working in consciousness, it's a multidimensional field. There's so much information that we can get from that space. So everything is coded in that for me, because that's how we get the support to heal. It can meet you on any level. It doesn't matter where you are.
Beautiful. And I know so you mentioned the energetic codes as being unloved, unworthy, and unknown. And that reminds me of something that might be coming out soon, maybe even by the time we release this episode. So, can you
Yes.
share more? If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get to see the book, which Allura is deciding on the book cover. Tell us more about your book, because this is so
Yeah,
exciting.
the
Yeah.
book is called Unloved, Unworthy, Unknown: Journey to a New Level of Consciousness, and it will be released by mid-March. So if you're listening after, it will be available. And it's basically the formula of understanding these wounds, understanding the portal of your pain, of your nervous system, of how to restructure things on an energetic consciousness level. So maybe another level to a level of healing you may have experienced before from a somatic or psychological level. I'm trying to express how to get to the root of the foundational experience of being human and how to work from the changes from there. And so I think from the journey I took out of my body and back, being able to see how reality is designed was probably the greatest gift. And I'm not saying it's definitive. I'm sure there's other ways of interpreting reality, but it's given a really strong foundation for how to work with things, because we're born into this world, right? But no one really teaches us how reality functions. Like, what are the mechanisms around us and within us that create our human experience? I think that kind of gets missed. It's just a given. Well, we're here and this is what we do and this is life and we get on with it. But for me and for the people that are seeking and sensitive, there's such another realm of understanding to have here that is so freeing. And I believe that inkling that people have that things don't feel quite right, or I'm really sensitive and overwhelmed by everything, or I just can't seem to get out of this pain, you're the ones that are here for that work, because you have that level of sensitivity that brings consciousness. And I had that awareness as well, because prior to my awakening, I was uncomfortable, but I was more unconscious in myself. I wasn't aware that there was a problem until I had the awakening and I woke up. I was like, wow, there's so much here that's not aligned. So if there's that inkling, I would say this is, to dive into that more, whether it's through this book or through somewhere else, but keep inquiring. Don't just accept that that's how it has to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned the spiritual seeker, which is something that I also connect so much with that word, because that is that that inner calling that you can't quite describe. And you're on the right podcast, because these are the women and
Yeah.
I shouldn't say women, because there's also men listening. Yes, we love you, because we want more spiritually awakened men as well. But there's something that connects us when there's just this level of understanding of, once again, something that we can maybe not explain or make sense of, yet it's this deeper knowing, because it exists at a level that is beyond the mind. So and it's never easy to explain it. So I appreciate when I can hear other teachers and the way in which you are sharing it. I'm curious, because now I'm going to go back to some things where you said timeline. You mentioned, so that you jumped timeline. You mentioned about the dimension that we're in, the reality that we're in. And something tells me that you're open to maybe exploring what that looks like, in terms of the belief that our consciousness, our universal consciousness, is shifting, that there is something that,
Mm,
and I would imagine that most people who are listening can agree that there's a sense of something shifting right
yeah.
now. What's been your experience? What can you share with us on that topic?
Yeah. Well, my awakening was really interesting in its timing because it was 2019. So it was just as the world kind of shut down. Like we entered into a new paradigm with the world shutting down and something opening within us. And just to get a little bit multidimensional, I literally woke up at that time with a remembrance of waking up at these pivotal times in our humanity in previous lifetimes. So
Mm,
waking up when there were shifts that were arising, within humanity. And those shifts were almost always some form of cataclysm or some form of reorientation that happened that caused us to get squeezed in a way. But the squeezing was the almost the impetus for that next level of consciousness and awakening to come through. And instead of sensing that it was, a negative thing or something to fight against, it was more a sense of, oh, this is an opening where we're now being taken to another dimension in the duality of something being closed for something to be opened. And I sense that we're now in a paradigm where consciousness is so readily available for us like no other time that we've had in recent history. We are we have incredible access. And I see this in people that are coming to do the work when they step into the consciousness. It's like, oh, wow, I can get this really quickly. Like I can pick this up really fast. And when I started to do this work, it was a lot slower and probably a reflection of me also, but it's slower for people to get into that field of awareness. But what I'm seeing across the board now is the incredible capacity we have to be the creators of our experience. It's actually this time is the time to be able to make that inner shift to create that new level of reality. And I think we're perfectly positioned for that. I'm only positive about what's coming for everybody, but especially those that are doing the work and setting those realities in motion, right? Because we're projecting the reality. We are the creators of the reality. So we need to make sure that our inner template, our projector is clear and it's not holding that density that keeps it from the clear vision that we want to experience and realize.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very reflective of what you were saying earlier, which is that the pain and the fear is our portal to it, more connection with this consciousness. And it's the same thing happening at the collective level, is what you're saying as well. And it's also the way I understand it, that the fear, the pain, the suffering, which is, always on a human level, not what you want to witness or to experience in any way, shape, or form. Yet this understanding that maybe at a more collective consciousness level, that it is the gateway into an awakening that is taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the trick that I found was really like when it dawned on me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've set it up that way, whoever you is.
Mhm.
Us,
Mhm.
probably, we've created it, so we've set it up that way. But the way to liberate is via the parts we do not want to go to, the parts we don't want to see, the parts we shut out and find too difficult. So I was like, well, what if it's not that hard, or I make it clear and accessible to go where you don't want to go? Then we don't have to be trapped in that. And I think for me, at the very core of everything is liberation. I'm all about personal liberation, energetic sovereignty, where you're sovereign and free in your energy. You're not latched into external patterns and programs and realities where you feel at the mercy of that. You're sovereign in your choice. And to become sovereign, you have to go through your fear, because your fear is the only thing that's keeping you limited. And to know that you can go through that and free yourself is probably the biggest thing. And important for me as well to mention, in all the work I do, I'm very much about being a conduit for this work and having the people that work alongside me doing this sovereign in that. So it's not about me being a teacher, it's about me supporting the ignition of that consciousness that everyone needs to claim as their own. And I think this is important to speak to, because I know it's easy to fall into that space of like, you need me to get where you're going. You don't need me.
Mhm.
You don't need me at all. In fact, I don't want you to need me. I just want to
Mhm.
offer the understanding. And I've had so many humans come and take that understanding, initiate their lives and leave. And that's what I want. I want people to have that awakening and feel sovereign in that, not that you have to keep being connected to something to make it okay. Even this work. Yeah.
Mhm. And that sometimes can be the difficult part, in the sense of, I want to say that it can be lonely work,
Yeah.
but you're not really alone when you are with Source. So you're not alone. Yet it can feel, on an ego level, or if you are in that separated state, can feel lonely in the sense that no one else can do it for you. As you said, you can facilitate in terms of, or help be a channel, help someone connect, understand something, but ultimately everyone is doing this work on their own. And
Yeah.
that, just shows the integrity that you have, because we certainly, and especially now, right now in the world, right, are seeing people that maybe have been put on pedestals, and then we're kind of left feeling disillusioned by it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is so important. That's another, trap that I'm very aware of. I think
Mhm.
what is powerful is the community of
Mhm.
humans that are doing this. And with the work I do, we're online 5 days. So I'm available 5 days for people to check in the consciousness method work, to come and share where they're at, and to hear other people sharing what they're
Mhm.
going through and where they're at in the process. So you're not alone in your
Yeah.
trauma, in your tragedy, in your expression. And because we have these universal patterns of being unloved, unworthy, and unknown, the mirror of seeing others doing the work and working through these parts, it's so actually exciting, because
Mhm.
you see people have these breakthroughs and you're like, oh my gosh, it's
Mm.
so visceral to feel someone else when they come alive in themselves. So I agree, you cannot do this work in isolation. Well, you can, but it's really challenging. And I tried to do it, and that was the hardest piece, I think, not having anyone really understand me
Yeah.
and where I was at. That was really hard, especially from that unknown wounding, like people just not getting it. So that's the thing, to be understood in where you are in your journey, I think is a beautiful gift.
Yes, and it can be perceived or seen as being a mental breakdown, which in some ways it is a
Yeah.
mental breakdown, right? But it's not.
Yeah, of
It's the
course.
mental breakdown that's actually inviting you towards a breakthrough or towards a whole an awakening of consciousness. I'm curious. I would love to hear what, because you spoke about what happened and then kind of the 2 years after as
Mm.
being very much a reorientation in terms of learning to be back in your body, learning to navigate the world, the physical realm with this new awakening that was present. So I'd love to hear what is it like now that you are more like what does life look like today for you?
That's such a beautiful question. Yeah, so the most important part after I could, I was back significantly, was to work with my children, my three beautiful children that are now 15, 13, and 11. And I worked with them in a way which was so important for me to orientate their experience of my journey in a way that they could see the truth of that for themselves, that they weren't abandoned and they weren't left in any way, even though I energetically kind of left the building for a while, that love was there constantly and ongoing. And it was just critical for me to make sure they had space to process that because of my awareness of the imprints that these things can have on kids. It wasn't just about, taking the information and going out into the world and beginning to teach it and focusing on, my students and, creating that. It was about working from the foundation and working with the people around me and making sure that was in alignment and clear and those wounds weren't being projected. So that was number one. So I have three divine children that are very happy and flourishing. And my marriage absolutely didn't make it, unfortunately, but I'm still very close with my ex-husband, and he's about to have a baby with his new partner, and he's very, very happy with his life. That that split was probably the most painful and difficult piece in the trauma that it brought because he fought pretty hard to keep me around, and that trying to move out of that relationship was really challenging, but I knew that it wasn't going to serve me long term, and serve him either or any of us because of the design that we had. So that was a really big part as well. And then from there, so now that we have a beautiful relationship, the kids are happy, and to be honest, my life now looks like being of service and being in purpose around writing the book. I host retreats. I'm just about to start doing them the end of this year and next year around the world. So hopefully I'll get to Canada at some point.
Mm.
Yeah. And then serving, the mentorship clients every day online, creating meditations, and yeah, living a life where I feel very, very grateful to be in the presence of the senses and, just having a glass of water or sitting in the sun. It's almost like it's a gift to be here now, not a place where I'm feeling like I'm trapped or imprisoned by myself. So I just really love being alive now. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. Do you have specific practices? It's interesting because I tend to ask people in terms of what are the ways in which they stay spiritually connected. And yet with you, I'm feeling, so how do you stay in your body? Like, how do you stay grounded in your body?
Yeah.
I'm one of those too. I'm like, I know that for me, the work is in staying grounded, especially when you can feel so open and it's beautiful, yet at the same time, you can maybe feel yourself losing that sense of connectedness. So how do you
Yeah.
stay in your body? How do you stay grounded?
Yeah, I think for me now, instead of being grounded, it's being it's probably more being about being alive and
Mm.
about feeling energetically connected in life. So for me, that practice is I'm always working with the material that reality is offering me. So I'm always curious. So things will happen around me, and I will use those as points of investigation or exploration internally. And I'll do my own work. You know, if something's coming up or there's a trigger or a pattern, I'll go in and I'll work with that consciously within myself and keep clearing the internal resistance. I meditated up to 8 hours a day for 2 years. And so there was a period, and during that time, I had quite extensive multidimensional experiences. So, a lot of mystical experiences. I think I've ticked everyone off. So, when I came into reality, I was actually really aware that I want to be here. And I chose now. I chose this point in time, you know, here with you in this moment as being the most precious, potent time. So I kind of collapsed all timelines to come here. I was like, I don't need to see anymore. I understand what it is to be multidimensional, that we have that capacity. But the real challenge is being in presence, living and alive in this moment. So that's where that presence naturally arose from, clearing away that density. And I was like, wow, it's so good to be here.
Mm. I love how you said alive, and what a reframe too. Instead of being grounded, to be alive in your body, to be present. That is such a gift.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
Well, I am just, I can feel, and I'm sure everyone who is listening, we are receiving your energy even through this portal of of technology, whatever it may be. So
oh,
I am so deeply appreciative to have this time with you. And for people who are listening who want to be in your world, who want to learn more about what you offer, where's the best place to connect with you?
yeah. So just allurahallywell.com is my website, or Allura Halliwell on Instagram, or you can check out the Consciousness Method podcast on all the places. I just basically that's just chats with all the beautiful humans that have done this work. So you can hear about that. But there's space for everybody, you know, if you wanted to begin the work, there's space for you, and I'd be honored to support you. Yeah, and I'm just so
Wonderful.
grateful for this conversation, Renée. Like to have the space to connect with someone that's so in tune like yourself, and so vast in your consciousness and awareness, to be able to speak what's alive for me. It is really a gift. So thank you for the beautiful work you do and the way you create this container, and for everybody to listen to that. I'm so deeply grateful for you, and I'm sure so many of your listeners feel so blessed to have you in their ears and in their lives. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you. You're making me emotional as you say that. It's interesting because I was in prayer and really being okay. It's time to bring more depth, like wanting, calling in deeper conversations on the podcast, and here you are. So I love being able to present and go where maybe some people are not quite ready to go, and we get to be the little nudge to invite them into opening up their yeah, just the possibilities at the end of the
Yeah,
day. So we are
I
going to
love
be sharing all of the information in the show notes, including the information on where you can get Laura's new book called Unloved, Unworthy, and Unknown. I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy of this book. I tried ordering it before and then I realized, oh, it's not out yet. But by the time people are listening to this, it will be out. And I cannot wait. So thank you so much for being here, Allura. Thank you to everyone for listening. And once again, I want to remind you that you are always spiritually wired for love, for peace, for success, for connection, for abundance. And I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly live lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.